are going to be dramatic. I think they're going to be meaningful. But, I want to highlight their currency is as weak as it's ever been, and inflation is skyrocketing. And those two things combined with this naval blockade that's being successfully executed, together with us opening a lane in the Strait of Hormuz to move oil in and out and ships back in to get more oil. I mean, some days, I think this is important, Ashley, some days we are moving more oil now than we did pre-conflict because of the pipelines that have been opened up and all that's happening in the Middle East. And so this is obviously, we are entering an end phase, but, Scott Bessent's announcement today is critical and important.
Matt Whitaker, the U.S. ambassador to NATO, talking about economic D-Day. Of course, we heard from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent at the beginning of the show when he was delivering the remarks as to how this is going to look and what they're going to enact here to put maximum economic pressure on Iran. Let's get to our guest. Victoria Coates joins us, Vice President for Heritage's Foundation's Catherine and Shelby Cullum Davis Institute for National Security and Foreign Policy, also former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Donald Trump. Victoria, such a pleasure to have you back on the show today. Big news that we started the show today with Economic D-Day. What's your reaction to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent's remarks?
Oh, good to be with you, Annie. And yeah, no shortage of content today.
Correct.
So plenty going on. But no, this is a really critical announcement. And I think what we're seeing is the kind of cumulative effects of what President Trump has done with his Iran policy, really beginning in the first term, when we had, our maximum pressure campaign against Iran, because that damage was never fixed. The Iranians never invested in their economy, and the economic relief they got under Biden, all they did with that was put it into stuff like October 7th, the nuclear program, the IRGC. What they gave to the Iranian people were essentially subsidies. They just paid for free stuff for them, primarily gasoline and food, so that they wouldn't, put up a fight. But nothing was fixed. And so what we've seen over the last 18 months is things get just horrifically bad for Iran. It's unprecedented. And all of it works together, including the two military operations, which have done so much damage. So what we're seeing now is, the president and the secretary saying, this is no longer a means to a negotiation. We're not trying to persuade you to do something here. We are simply telling you your economy is going to cease to exist.
Whew. I mean, that seems like a huge step in a maybe new direction, but I'd assume that there were elements of this that were happening before, but now this is the full-on, all-hands-on-deck effort. And it seems as though the administration has put the world on notice that, it does take two to tango, that they're going to be paying attention to those who are enabling Iran. Who might those specific parties be? Or is the administration singling out different countries that might have been assisting Iran in their ability to continue to function? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. And it's why it's, all of these previous actions are what are enabling what's happening today. And there are two lanes here. One is, it was very interesting. You had my friend, Ambassador Matt Whitaker, the ambassador to NATO, commenting on Iran sanctions. Why is that important? It's because Europe still does more than $5 billion worth of commerce with Iran every year. They should knock that off. And they recently got around to sanctioning the IRGC as a terrorist organization, because it is. But, they can take a lot more steps here. And I think Europe should be on notice that President Trump is serious when he says he wants them to step up and assist. And, he has shown through his very tough love for NATO that they're not above reproach. And, other countries like South Korea, for example, no, he's not just going to go ahead and keep defending them, open checkbook for as long as you need, no matter how, difficult you are with America. We need you to step up and help us. If you do, we will help you. But it's a two-way street, not a one-way street. So I think we should look at our Asian partners, look at our European partners, but then also at the Gulf. UAE has stepped up and said that they're going to stop all commerce with Iran. I'd like to see Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain do that, even Iraq, which is going to be very hard for them to do, but we can help them a lot as well, and hopefully they can get to a good place on this.
What's your reaction? We're speaking with Victoria Coates here. What are your thoughts on these Middle Eastern countries, the ones that are within striking distance of errant missiles from Iran? When they find another red button to push and they push it, and then whatever happens. That's in my mind what happens. What is your thought about these neighboring countries that have been pretty agreeable to President Trump and his willingness to recalibrate the Middle East and ensure that Iran won't achieve that pursuit of a nuclear weapon? Have they been full on, completely on board with President Trump, or is this a little bit of a, like, we're watching you folks too to make sure that you're not talking out of both sides of your mouth?
They've been pretty committed. And, I think if you have me on this time next year, we're going to be talking about that new Middle East that emerged in the aftermath of the Iran war, because I've been tracking, particularly in the energy sector, some very material moves that these countries have been making. Qatar opening the Golden Pass natural gas export facility outside of Houston in March, like literally as the war started, that facility came online. Qatar had taken a lot of criticism for investing billions of dollars in somebody else's, natural gas export, but they control 70% of that product. So right now, if you're Japan and you're getting a shipment of gas from Qatar Gas, that gas is coming from Texas. You can't have a more material connection than that. The Saudi nuclear deal, they could have gone to Russia for that. There wouldn't have been anything we could do about it. They went to the United States. So I think, and what UAE just did with Iran, I think you're seeing these countries start to line up. They know the United States is the strong horse. China's not stepping in to resolve this. Russia's not stepping in to resolve Who does it leave? America.
So, Victoria Coates speaking with us right now. In your observation of the United States specifically being the country that has the power to be able to say, we're going to launch economic D-Day against another country, have you seen anything to the magnitude with which President Trump and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent have said what they're going to do? Have you seen this be enacted against a country in this type of a capacity before?
No, it really is unprecedented. I guess the closest we see are Cuba and Venezuela, and both of those economies are literally on the verge of collapse. Venezuela coming back from the edge now that we took out their leader, and they're starting to cooperate. But nothing like this has been done, and it's really it's a new kind of phase of analysis. And we've started doing this at Heritage, where our sort of traditional military strategy papers, you're going to do a strategy for the Indo-Pacific. You really don't talk much about economic issues. We're going to have a new one coming out this fall where we're going to do just that. We're going to say, look, yes, the Indo-Pacific is the source of our greatest challenge, China, but it's also our greatest economic opportunity. Europe's essentially committing ritual suicide. The growing economies are all in Southeast Asia, and we need to partner with those people for our own well-being. And so I think what you're seeing, that's a very positive trend. What you're seeing, on the other hand, the flip side of that with Iran is how we can use that power to punish an enemy rather than elevate an ally. And this, as I said, has not been tried before on this scale. There's never been an economy on the scale of the United States that has this kind of global dominance. So, it is a little bit of uncharted waters, but I have the feeling pretty much anyone who is given the choice of doing business with Iran or doing business with the United States, it's not even going to be a choice, including for China.
Victoria, does the decision to lay down their arms, I don't even know if there was an all-out surrender, would the administration, would the military experts expect to wake up the next day and still have that surrender be on? I mean, I feel like there's not even a trust but verify. There's just verify. To me, it's the anticipation that I have here with Iran. I mean, what is the full, complete victory in this conflict look like for President Trump? What does he need to see?
I think what we need to see is kind of a fall of the Berlin Wall moment, that you will see the sort of the majority, the bulk of the Iranian military, 2/3 of it, which are not the IRGC, start to be completely, literally starved, running out of food, running out of ammunition. And as the Iranian people are also in such difficult straits, that that they may make common cause, and when the Iranian people rise up, those guys won't shoot them. And so I think that is a complete victory. I think an acceptable victory is if Iran is just essentially walled off. They can't project power beyond their borders. They can't do anything about the strait. And we know we can go in and take care of whatever pieces of the nuclear program we need to, because there's nothing they can do about it. That is also a win. But, a total victory will be the Iranian people able to determine their own government again.
Yeah. And of course, everybody, you're here to talk about foreign policy, but everybody is wondering how foreign policy is going to be affected by our very own midterm election, which is not terribly far away. Do you see the president and this administration engaging in policy directed towards a timeline, or more so a deadline, with those midterms approaching in November?
I think that deadline actually already passed. I think it passed around July 1st, when actions taken now would impact prices, for example, by the time we get to the midterms. At this point, it's pretty much cooked in. The only thing I think, and this is going to be such a domestic election, midterms almost always are.
Right.
It takes something a lot more extreme than the military engagement with Iran to shift the needle. So I think in this case, the only thing that would actually shift the needle is if that collapse in Iran comes over the next 4 to 6 weeks, which it could, depending on how the sanctions policy goes. What if the president wins?
Yeah. Ugh. Well, let's just hold on tight. I know that these stories, they seem to ebb and flow quite a bit, but this seemed like a pretty big announcement from the administration and from the Secretary of the Treasury today.
It is. It's a very, very big step.
All right. Well, thank you so much for the expertise today, Victoria. We value it here on our show and on our station, and we look forward to having you back before next year when we're talking about the new Middle East, but definitely within that year. I'd love to revisit that conversation. Thanks for the time today.
Sounds good. Thank you, Annie.
Take care. Bye-bye. Victoria Coates, she is the former Deputy National Security Advisor to President Donald Trump.